Hello, Kelly Renee Miller here, in my pajamas, and it's 9 o'clock, and I've been in my pajamas since I got home at 2:30 because for once, that's when my day ended. I came home, I took a nap, it was beautiful. Sparks flew, emotions ran high. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. What I'm here for is I have another comic shop haul. Kind of, a mini haul, as I do. I do about 3 at a time, or I try to. I was intending to do 4 today. You'll find out why I did not momentarily. Today's haul, if you recall, the last haul is from Comics Unlimited down in Orange County, California. Today's comic shop haul is from Golden Apple Comics on Melrose Avenue and Melrose Boulevard and La Brea Avenue, or you can switch those last 2 street denotations. It's one of the 2. Melrose and La Brea in Los Angeles, California. And if you read it, reads 35 years, Golden Apple Comics, 100% local, which is always a good way to shop. This is a smaller comic book shop. I hadn't been to many, but I'd heard of this shop because a few of my already indoctrinated comic book friends frequent this one because they live in that area. I'm a little bit farther north. But let's see what I got. So, if you recall, last time, my Hawkeye versus Deadpool was actually the 2nd issue and not the 1st. I can see why, because this particular cover would not have caught my eye nearly as much as the previous cover. But here we go. This is Hawkeye versus Deadpool. Number 1. Aha! So let's see where the story begins instead of being dropped into the middle of it. The lovely lady at the comic book shop told me that there are probably only 4 of these because it is a side storyline to the greater, which I didn't know existed. You might have. I didn't. Greater just Hawkeye comic. Hawkeye has his own comic book storyline that is about him and what he's doing when he's not being an Avenger. So if you are interested in getting that, it is just called Hawkeye, and it's this font right here, that one. It just doesn't say versus Deadpool beneath, and the covers also tend to be more James Bond title-y in that they're just blocks of color, Art Deco style, with a stylized version of the character on them. So they're easy to find, but you'd recognize them most by the brightly blocked color and that font for Hawkeye. And I went to just get, follow up on the comics I had already purchased, which were Guardians of the Galaxy, year 2013, issue number 1. I went to get number 2, and discovered that that particular storyline in that universe has actually been going since it was first published last year, and they're now to the point where they're publishing, I believe, serial editions, or publications that are compilations of sets of however many weeks of the paperback comics, and they're in larger book form, so that it's still paperback, but it's much larger, kind of like a special edition of Calvin and Hobbes. I really ought to know what the name of that style of publishing is so I can describe it more easily, because I feel like I'm rambling. So, as I said, Golden Apple keeps things more current, so they didn't have number 2. It is from last year, but they do have those books in serials, and they're in the 4th edition of that now. So there have been quite a few. She's mentioned there have been 40 or so since then, since the one I purchased. So I'll be going back for that at some point in the not too distant future. And I also went to get Death of Wolverine, Deadpool, and Captain America number 2, because it left off at a pretty significant cliffhanger. And I thought that it was new, but reportedly from the lovely people at the comic book shop, since it is another tributary of a larger comic book storyline, much like Hawkeye versus Deadpool, this is a side story about how other characters are affected by the death of Wolverine, and Death of Wolverine is its own major comic book storyline. That there might not be an issue number 2, and I am sad. I hope there is one. If there is one, it was new, so it is not yet published. It seems to be bi-weekly or monthly if they're going to do a second one. Or another possibility, based on how it ended, I might just be picking that up in that storyline. This might have just been the 405, where it leaves I-5 and then comes right back to it. So that might have just been like, meanwhile, a meanwhile storyline, and the end of what happened at the end is picked up in the grander scheme of the Death of Wolverine comic book storyline. Who knows? However, I did not walk away with just one comic book. No, I decided to expand my horizons into the DC side of things, because I don't know much about DC. Because of that, I did not go with what I already knew. I did not go with Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman. I know too much about them, and quite frankly, there are just too many places to begin. And as I said, Golden Apple keeps things more on the current side, so they have a few back issues here and there, but with regards to, like, issue number 1 of whatever storyline or universe I wanted to go with, those are characters that have just been around too long for Golden Apple to have them. And I don't know where to start. If you have any suggestions on where I may begin, by all means, please tell me, because I'm more than open to it. Like, let me learn some in-depth background. I know quite a bit about Batman, because he's a little bit everywhere, and I know a decent amount about Superman. If you guys have anything about Superman that is less like sunshine, bunnies, and cotton candy, do let me know. I like a little bit of edge. But I would love to know more about Wonder Woman's Amazon origin. So if you could point me in any of those directions, that would be fantastic. Anyway, moving on. Please quell your nerd rage in advance. I picked up DC Comics #1, the New 52, Deathstroke. Because Deathstroke was a character that I had already heard of. Now, I had heard of him, yes, and not confusing him with Deadpool, I thought he was another X-Man, just because I didn't know. So now I'm really curious, I'm even more curious about Deathstroke. I know, nerd rage, I'm sorry, because he's DC, which means he's most likely not a mutant and definitely not an X-Man. So, I don't know anything about him. Let's find out. It's, I mentioned it as I introduced as part of the New 52, which my guess would be they take existing characters and do a new, like, story with them weekly for a year, which would be 52, or there's 52 new characters, and he's one of them, and this is their, like, universe altogether. I would be astounded at that. That is a lot of new characters. I mean, there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of comic book characters, so I guess 52, by comparison, is a pretty small number, but that seems quite expansive to be included as, like, a new, to be denoted on a front page title place area. Also, on the back, Constantine! Watch it on NBC. I watched the pilot. Constantine is another one I didn't know about. Being a comic book character. I'm probably going to catch up on that tonight. Yes, it's already late, but I'm a night owl and I took a nap. I'm caught up on Gotham, and I am going to catch up on The Flash. I'm going to watch me some Constantine, like I just said, but forgot for a moment. And have some wine, and I'm going to have a great all night. And then, I feel like the coup de grace, the lot of fat in French, that's how that translates, which is why people say coup de grace, because a lot of fat just sounds gross. Of today's comic shop haul is something I was astounded to discover. It's also DC at such a low price. It's still wrapped in its plastic with its paperboard backing to avoid bending. It's a little bit heavier paperweight and looks like a thicker comic book. If I didn't want to read it so badly, I probably just wouldn't open it, but even though it was really, really inexpensive, but I might open it with gloves. More on that when I tell you what I think of it in my review blog. But it is DC, the Golden Age, and its Golden Age, as you can see, is raised and shiny. It's by James Robinson, Paul Smith, and Richard Ory. And I'm not entirely sure what it's about. I see a lot of characters that look vaguely familiar, but I don't really recognize. But upon closer inspection, it looks like what I might be about to read is a tale of well-known superheroes. Like I see Flash, and I see Batman. I see other characters whose costumes I recognize, but I'm not entirely certain of their name or which universe they belong to, so I'm not going to say it. But here you go. It looks like it might be these characters in an earlier time, such as the 1940s, World War II era, perhaps? Maybe even World War I, 'cause it is black and white, Son of Life. Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited to read that because of it. So that was what I did today. That's today's comic shop haul. It is Hawkeye versus Deadpool, issue number 1, because I started with number 2. We have DC Comics number 1 of the New 52, Deathstroke, with a shout out to Constantine on the back. And DC Comics, The Golden Age, book 1 of 4. And it is more book-like than the other comic books. So that's what I did today. Like I said, if you have any suggestions on where to begin with the DC Big 3, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, do let me know. And other than that, have a great night, everyone.